Thanks for tuning into the podcast. In the last episode, we talked about what makes music scary and the instruments used in horror music. Today, we'll be talking about the cultural differences in horror and how horror differs from around the world. Why does America make so many horror movies about home invasion? Why are supernatural horror films so popular in Japan? Horror reflects the current anxieties of our society, and these anxieties change between cultures. Our culture, the society we live in, and the values we hold influence what we find scary. Cultural traumas influence a lot of the horror genre. In 2016, America produced an increased number of home invasion movies, such as Hush, Don't Breathe, and The Purge election year. What influenced this sudden uptick in home invasion horrors? These horrors reflected the fears of many American citizens during this time, as well as the political state of America. One of their biggest fears? Invasion from foreigners. Evident through the policies of elected President Donald Trump, many Americans were afraid of immigrants and foreigners entering their country, increasing their consumption of horror movies centered around home invasion with the intent to harm or steal from the homeowners. The same thing happened after 9/11. After the 9/11 terrorist attacks, we saw an increase in post-apocalyptic movies in America. This reflected America's fears of apocalypse and the collapse of society. Movies such as I Am Legend, War of the Worlds, and Doomsday were big hits at the box office. Horror movies are also affected by and reflect the cultural traumas of groups of people. Get Out is a psychological thriller that follows Chris and his white girlfriend Rose, and the disturbing events that happened to him at her family home. This movie portrays some of the fears of African Americans and the racism that they face. Silence of the Lambs and The Shining tackle the horror of domestic violence. These themes transcend cultures and can be impactful to any person around the globe who has been affected by domestic violence. Horror also acts as a good social commentary on the current injustices in the world. Latin American films, such as The Devil's Backbone and The Orphanage, tackle themes of injustice and colonialism that Latin America has faced. The Middle Eastern movie The Jinn addresses the religious extremism in many Islamic countries. In the movie, the Jinn, a being from Islamic mythology, acts as a metaphor for how extremist ideologies and religion manipulate their viewers. Horror is affected by the cultural traumas we face and act as a good social commentary for the problems we're currently dealing with in the world. Each culture has their own style of horror, evident in both the stories and the way that those stories are portrayed. In Western countries, horror movies cover a broad spectrum of topics, while in Asia, they tend to focus on ghosts, curses, and Asian mythology. In Western countries, specifically America, slasher movies make up a large part of horror movies. While other countries have also produced their own slashers, America produces them on a mass scale in comparison. This may be due to the different styles within horror. In Asian countries, horror movies are made to be creepy, while in Western countries the goal is to be genuinely scary. Western horror uses shock factor to achieve fear in their viewers. Gore and jump scares are largely featured in Western horror, while other countries use psychological tactics to make viewers feel uncomfortable. Asian horror relies heavily on atmosphere, sound, and plot to create a creepy movie. While gore and jump scares are a surefire way to scare viewers, the plot becomes less important. Films from other countries that don't rely on shock horror tend to have more detailed plots and characters. Like Asian horror, Latin horror tends to focus on atmosphere and psychological tactics. Latin horror tends to focus on supernatural and psychological themes, such as trauma. It's typical for Latin films to depict surreal imagery and blur the lines between what is real and supernatural, creating a sense of unease in the viewer. The Gothic horror style is popular in Spanish movies, using dark atmosphere and themes of death. Latin horror tends to use deep symbolism to depict its themes. African horror also uses deep symbolism. Their movies also tend to focus on the fear of the unknown and have heavy spiritual themes. African horror films usually depict folklore tales or show the harsh realities of living in Africa. Many European horror movies also depict folklore. Many European horror takes on a gothic style, and art horror, giallo, and dark comedy are popular European horror styles. These movies tend to focus on the psychological horror, such as obsession or madness, and extreme violence and body horror is a popular fear tactic used in Europe. Many horror movies also feature cultural myths and legends. For example, the 2019 horror The Curse of La Llorona features Mexican legend La Llorona. La Llorona is a vengeful spirit who roams near bodies of water, waiting to drown children. The Ring also has elements of cultural beliefs and legends throughout. The author of the book stated that the book was based on the traditional ghost story of Bancho Sarayashiki. It featured a vengeful spirit known as an onryo that haunts the people who betrayed her. His House, a 2020 horror thriller about a refugee couple from South Sudan, features a supernatural mythological being known as an apath. Apaths are a part of Dinka folklore. The Dinka people are a group of people from South Sudan, mostly living along the Nile River. They make up 40% of the population of Sudan. Apaths are believed to stalk and punish people who have wronged them or others. In the film, an apath follows the South Sudanese couple to their new home in England and tries to punish them for past mistakes. The Wendigo, a supernatural being from Algonquin-speaking First Nations tribes in North America, is featured in many horror movies. The most popular is the Disney 2021 film Antlers, a supernatural horror following a teacher, her police officer brother, and one of their students and their encounters with the Wendigo. It is believed in First Nation mythology that greedy or weak people turn into Wendigos. They usually kill and eat their victims. The 2019 Indian film Tumbad features Hastar, a fallen god who turns into a demon. Contrary to the previous films mentioned, Hastar is not actually a part of Hindu mythology. The film plays into this by telling the viewers that Hastar has been erased from all records. Tumbad utilizes the horror that accompanies mythology and legends without being based on any true Hindu legends. Mythology is effective in horror for multiple reasons. Firstly, mythology is usually created to teach us a lesson. Both Antlers and Tumbad teach us the consequences behind being greedy, and His House teaches us the importance of overcoming trauma. These movies show us that behaving in ways that differ from these lessons ends in unfortunate circumstances. Secondly, folklore usually contains supernatural beings. All of the aforementioned movies contain a supernatural or demon-like being. These beings trigger our fears of the unknown and fear of the uncontrollable. They also frighten us because of their power over human beings and our inability to fight back. Lastly, folklore is deeply personal to many cultures and are often rooted in that culture's beliefs and shared experiences. These folklore tales may have a deeper impact on viewers of the same culture because those themes are familiar to them. Mexican viewers may be more scared of the Curse of La Llorona than Hindu viewers, but Hindu viewers may be more scared of Tumbad than Mexican viewers. It is important that folklore movies are created by members of the culture that the folklore is drawn from. The movie Antlers featured only one First Nations character, and only for a short period of time. None of the producers or directors were First Nations. Because folklore is deeply personal to many cultures, it is important not to exploit these stories. A new development to the horror scene is internet culture. With the creation of the internet also came the invention of creepypastas. Creepypastas are horror-related legends that are shared around the internet. They are usually believed to be cursed. Only a select few creepypastas have been turned into movies. The most popular is Slender Man, a 2018 horror based on the creepypasta of the same name. While there aren't many movies on creepypastas, there are tons of YouTube creepypastas available to watch. The most popular of these include Candle Cove, I Feel Fantastic, and Bunny Girl Tap Dancing. Lost media and supposed haunted footage is also a big part of internet horror. Haunted and lost media is scary because usually the origins of the footage is unknown. Some haunted lost media includes Suicide Mouse, Dead Bart, and Red Mist Squidward, all of which are now available on YouTube. These videos are scary because they take beloved children's shows and add a dark twist to them, which many people believe is haunted. These videos were all originally posted over a decade ago, close to the creation of YouTube. The origins of these videos and the purpose of them being unknown makes them terrifying. Found footage is a newer horror genre that emerged with the creation of the internet. Found footage utilizes authenticity and low production quality to create a feeling of real dread within viewers. Because the movie seems as though it is really happening, it immerses its viewers completely. The best found footage movie of all time is The Blair Witch Project, created in 1999. The genius of this movie is that it completely convinced the audience that it was real. The movie starred unknown actors Heather Donahue, Joshua Leonard, and Michael Williams. To make the movie feel real, the actors were left in the woods with little food and told to improvise. The movie was also recorded entirely on a shaky camcorder. This added to the authenticity of the film, making people believe that it truly was real footage recorded by college students. The marketing of the Blair Witch Project was the true genius. Because the actors in the film were unknown, they were able to lie low after its production. The Blair Witch team advertised that Donahue, Leonard, and Williams had gone missing. Their IMDb profiles were marked as deceased, and they weren't allowed to do any press footage for the movie. When the movie released, most viewers believed that this was actually the last footage of the students before their disappearance, causing many to believe in the existence of the Blair Witch. A new trend in horror is social media horror. Social media horror is a type of horror that uses the internet and social media as the primary setting. Most of the movie occurs over live stream, FaceTime style calling, or videos. This is known as screen-based horror. The theme of these movies usually has something to do with stalking, kidnapping, internet trolls, harassment, or online bullying. Internet horror movies include Host, Unfriended, and Cam. Overall, horror films reflect culture and beliefs and act as a good social commentary to challenge problems in the world. The use of mythology in horror allows us to learn more about different cultures and their values. The rise of the internet has also given us many new styles of horror. Thanks for listening to this episode of the podcast. In the next episode, we'll be reviewing Horror Through the Ages and seeing how it progressed. Thank you.